We live in a world that celebrates togetherness, teamwork, and connection. We are told to surround ourselves with people, to network, to always be in the presence of others. And while human connection is undeniably powerful, there is an underrated, often overlooked force that shapes the strongest among us: being alone. Let me ask you something. When was the last time you sat in silence without distractions? No phone, no TV, no background noise, just you alone with your thoughts. For most people, that's an uncomfortable experience. But discomfort is where growth happens. You see, we become stronger when we learn to be alone. Because when we are alone, we are forced to confront ourselves, our fears, our insecurities, our doubts. And that's a good thing. When no one is around to validate us, we must learn to validate ourselves. When there's no one to give us direction, we must learn to trust our own instincts. Think about the most resilient leaders, the visionaries, the pioneers. They didn't become who they are by constantly seeking approval. They became who they are because they spent time in solitude, thinking, questioning, learning. Steve Jobs took long walks alone to think. Albert Einstein would isolate himself to solve complex problems. Even some of the greatest warriors in history trained in solitude before they ever led an army. Being alone is often viewed as uncomfortable, even unsettling. We live in a world that constantly encourages us to be social, to surround ourselves with people, to always be engaged in conversations or activities. But what if I told you that discomfort, the very feeling we often try to escape, is actually the key to personal growth and strength? When we are alone, we have no distractions. There's no one to impress, no one to entertain, and no external noise to fill the silence. It is in these moments that we are forced to sit with our thoughts, and for many, that can be incredibly difficult. The mind starts to wander, insecurities rise to the surface, and doubts begin to creep in. But this is where the magic happens. Growth does not come from comfort. It comes from facing what makes us uncomfortable and working through it. Imagine an athlete training for a marathon. They don't build endurance by running at an easy pace every day. They push their limits. They embrace the discomfort of tired muscles, shortness of breath, and mental exhaustion because they know that on the other side of that struggle is strength. The same applies to our mental and emotional growth. When we allow ourselves to sit in solitude and process our fears, we gain clarity. We begin to understand what truly drives us, what scares us, and what areas of our lives need improvement. Many people avoid solitude because it forces them to face things they would rather ignore. It is easy to distract ourselves with social media, conversations, or entertainment, but those are temporary escapes. The real work happens when we allow ourselves to experience discomfort and push through it. Think of it as mental training. The more time you spend alone, the more resilient you become. You learn to manage your emotions, control your thoughts, and develop a deeper understanding of yourself. History is filled with examples of great thinkers and leaders who embraced solitude. Steve Jobs was known for taking long, solitary walks to think and generate new ideas. Albert Einstein often isolated himself to work on complex problems without distractions. Even spiritual leaders like Buddha and Jesus spent time alone in deep reflection before their greatest teachings emerged. This pattern is not a coincidence. It is through solitude that the deepest insights are born. One of the biggest fears people have about being alone is facing their own doubts. But what if instead of running from them, we use solitude as an opportunity to challenge those doubts? What if instead of avoiding discomfort, we leaned into it? That is where real transformation happens. The strongest individuals are not the ones who are constantly surrounded by people. They are the ones who have spent time alone, understanding their own minds and emerging stronger because of it. The reality is, life will not always provide comfort. There will be moments when we have to stand alone, make difficult decisions, and push through adversity without external support. If we never train ourselves to be comfortable with discomfort, we will always seek validation and guidance from others. True strength comes from the ability to rely on yourself, to trust your instincts, and to navigate challenges with confidence. The next time you find yourself alone, Resist the urge to fill the silence with distractions. Instead, embrace it. Use that time to reflect, to grow, and to strengthen your mind. Because discomfort is not something to be feared, it is a sign that you are growing. And the more comfortable you become with being alone, the stronger you will be in every aspect of your life. From an early age, we are conditioned to seek validation from others. We look to parents, teachers, friends, and even strangers for approval. A compliment makes us feel good, while criticism can shake our confidence. Over time, this external validation becomes a driving force in our decisions, shaping how we see ourselves and the world around us. But what happens when no one is around to offer approval? What if we had to rely solely on ourselves for validation? This is where the power of being alone comes in. When we spend time alone, we remove the constant feedback loop of external opinions. There is no one to tell us whether we're doing well or falling short. In this silence, we are faced with a crucial choice. Either we continue searching for validation from outside sources, or we learn to validate ourselves. The latter is what builds true inner strength. It means defining our own worth, independent of praise or criticism. Many people struggle with self-worth because they have spent their entire lives measuring their value based on what others think. Social media amplifies this by providing instant feedback in the form of likes, comments, and shares. A post that gets attention boosts confidence, while one that goes unnoticed can leave someone feeling invisible. But what if we detach from that cycle? What if we stopped seeking approval and instead started setting our own standards for success and fulfillment? Self-commission requires deep self-awareness. It means understanding who you are, what you stand for, and what truly matters to you. This is only possible when we spend time alone, reflecting on our values, strengths, and goals. In solitude, we can ask ourselves important questions. What do I believe in? What do I truly want? Am I living in alignment with my values? These questions are difficult to answer when we are constantly influenced by external voices. Some of the most impactful leaders and thinkers in history have mastered the ability to validate themselves. They did not wait for others to tell them their ideas were good enough. Instead, they trusted their instincts and pursued their vision, even when faced with doubt or opposition. Think of innovators like Elon Musk or Thomas Edison, people who pushed forward despite criticism and skepticism. Their belief in themselves was stronger than the need for outside approval. This does not mean ignoring feedback altogether. Constructive criticism is valuable and learning from others is important, but the difference lies in dependency. If our confidence is solely built on external validation, we become fragile. One negative comment, one rejection, or one failure can shake our entire sense of self. However, if we build confidence from within, we remain steady even when faced with challenges. Being alone gives us the space to practice self-acceptance. It allows us to appreciate our progress even when no one else is watching. It teaches us to celebrate small victories, to acknowledge our efforts, and to believe in our potential. When we can look in the mirror and say, I am enough, without needing anyone else to confirm it, we step into a place of true strength. The world will always have opinions. There will always be voices telling you what you should do, how you should act, and who you should be. But the most powerful voice you can listen to is your own. Learning to validate yourself means you no longer need approval to move forward. You no longer need permission to chase your dreams. And most importantly, you no longer rely on the outside world to define your worth. So the next time you find yourself alone, see it as an opportunity. Use that time to reflect on who you are and what truly matters to you. Because the moment you stop seeking validation from others and start validating yourself, you step into a new level of strength that no one can take away. History has shown us that some of the most brilliant minds, visionary leaders, and revolutionary thinkers embraced solitude as a tool for self-discovery and innovation. They understood that true breakthroughs rarely happen in crowded rooms filled with distractions and opinions. Instead, they happen in the quiet moments when a person is left alone with their thoughts. free to explore ideas without external influence. Being alone is not a sign of weakness or isolation. It is a deliberate choice that fosters deep thinking, creativity, and clarity. Steve Jobs, the co-founder of Apple, was known for his long, solitary walks. He often took these walks not just for exercise, but as a way to think deeply, strategize, and make critical decisions. He believed that solitude allowed him to connect with his intuition and refine his ideas before presenting them to the world. His ability to think independently rather than being swayed by the opinions of others was one of the key factors that set him apart as a leader. Jobs didn't seek approval for his ideas, he trusted his own vision, and that confidence led to innovations that changed the world. Albert Einstein, one of the greatest scientific minds in history, also valued solitude. He often worked in isolation, spending long hours contemplating complex problems. He once said the monotony and solitude of a quiet life stimulate the creative mind. Einstein recognized that true genius is not the result of constant interaction, but rather the ability to think deeply without distraction. His groundbreaking theories were not born in a group discussion or a brainstorming session. They were the result of solitary reflection and intellectual exploration. Even spiritual and philosophical leaders have emphasized the power of solitude. Buddha left behind a life of comfort and spent years in solitude seeking enlightenment. Jesus retreated into the wilderness for 40 days before beginning his ministry. These moments of solitude were not about loneliness, but about gaining clarity, wisdom, and a deeper understanding of purpose. They understood that in silence, we can hear our true selves, away from the noise of the world. Why does solitude have such a profound impact on creativity and leadership? Because when we are alone, we can think without interference. In a group, ideas are often shaped by the expectations and opinions of others. We may hesitate to explore certain thoughts out of fear of judgment, but in solitude, there is no pressure to conform. There is no need to filter ideas. This is where true originality is born. Many of the world's greatest writers, artists, and inventors have embraced the power of being alone. J.K. Rowling wrote the first Harry Potter book in cafes, lost in her own world. Nikola Tesla spent years working alone, focusing on his inventions. Leonardo da Vinci filled notebooks with ideas that were far ahead of his time, developed in solitude. The pattern is clear. Those who create, innovate, and lead at the highest level do not fear being alone. They seek it. Unfortunately, in today's hyper-connected world, solitude is often viewed as something to be avoided. We are constantly bombarded with notifications, emails, and messages. Every spare moment is filled with scrolling, watching, or responding. This constant engagement leaves little room for deep thought, but if we want to unlock our true potential, we must learn to embrace moments of solitude. Being alone gives us the space to reflect, to refine our ideas, and to listen to our intuition. It allows us to break free from the noise of external opinions and truly think for ourselves. The strongest leaders and the most creative minds have all recognized this truth. If we want to reach our highest potential, we must follow their example. Solitude is not a weakness, it is a superpower. Many people confuse loneliness with solitude, but they are fundamentally different experiences. Loneliness is the painful feeling of being disconnected, of longing for companionship that is not present. It is often accompanied by sadness, emptiness, and a sense of isolation. Solitude, on the other hand, is a conscious choice to be alone, not as a punishment, but as a path to self-discovery, peace, and strength. We live in an era of hyperconnectivity. At any given moment, we can send a message, make a call, or scroll through social media to feel a sense of connection. Yet, despite all this, loneliness is at an all-time high. Why? Because connection is not just about proximity to people. It's about meaningful relationships, both with others and with ourselves. Many people are surrounded by others but still feel lonely because they lack a true sense of self-connection. This is where solitude becomes powerful. Solitude is the act of being alone without feeling lonely. It is the ability to sit with oneself and be completely at peace, to enjoy one's own company, and to reflect without distraction. In solitude, we find clarity. We begin to understand who we are beyond the roles we play, beyond being a friend, a parent, a colleague, or a partner. Without external influences, we can hear our own thoughts, process our emotions, and gain insight into our true desires and ambitions. Some of the greatest thinkers, artists, and leaders have embraced solitude not because they lacked social connections, but because they understood its power. It was in solitude that Henry David Thoreau wrote Walden, a book about the importance of living simply and finding oneself through nature and self-reflection. It was in solitude that Vincent van Gogh created some of his most famous paintings, channeling his emotions into art rather than seeking validation from the world. And it was in solitude that countless philosophers, scientists, and writers developed groundbreaking ideas that shaped humanity. When we are alone, we are free from external expectations. We do not have to perform, please, or conform. We can simply be. This is why solitude is essential for personal growth. It allows us to check in with ourselves and ask important questions. Am I happy with where I am? What do I truly want? Am I living in alignment with my values? These questions can be difficult to answer when we are constantly engaged with others and distracted by the noise of daily life. Loneliness, on the other hand, arises when we feel disconnected not just from others, but from ourselves. It is possible to be surrounded by people and still feel lonely if we are not in tune with our own needs and emotions. Many people fill their schedules with social events, conversations, and distractions to avoid facing themselves. But avoiding solitude does not make the loneliness go away. It only masks it temporarily. The key to overcoming loneliness is not always found in seeking more social interactions. Instead, it can be found in embracing solitude and learning to be comfortable with oneself. When we develop a strong relationship with ourselves, we no longer feel the desperate need for constant external validation. We enjoy relationships for what they are, rather than using them to fill a void. Solitude builds strength. It teaches us that we can be our own source of comfort, joy, and inspiration. It allows us to cultivate inner peace, resilience, and self-awareness. Instead of fearing time alone, we should welcome it as an opportunity to reconnect with ourselves. Because when we are comfortable in our own company, we carry that confidence into every aspect of our lives. We are no longer dependent on others for our sense of worth. We create it within ourselves. Self-reliance and resilience are two of the most powerful traits a person can develop, and both are cultivated through solitude. In a world that constantly encourages collaboration, teamwork, and social engagement, the idea of doing things alone can feel uncomfortable. Many people fear being alone because they associate it with weakness or isolation. But the truth is, solitude is where strength is built. It is in our moments of solitude that we learn how to rely on ourselves, solve problems independently, and develop the resilience needed to navigate life's challenges. When we are constantly surrounded by others, we often lean on them for decision-making, problem-solving, and emotional support. While there is nothing wrong with seeking help, excessive dependence on others can prevent us from developing the ability to stand on our own. The strongest people in the world are not those who have never faced adversity, but those who have learned to handle it without always needing someone to guide them. Solitude forces us to take full responsibility for our actions, thoughts, and emotions. It teaches us that we are capable of finding solutions, making tough decisions, and persevering even when no one is around to reassure us. Resilience is not something we are born with, it is something we build over time. And one of the most effective ways to build resilience is by spending time alone and learning to handle life's difficulties independently. When we face challenges without immediately seeking external support, we train ourselves to think critically, adapt to situations, and manage our emotions. Over time, we become more confident in our ability to handle setbacks, failures, and obstacles. Think of a tree growing in a harsh environment. A tree that faces strong winds, poor soil, and extreme weather develops deep roots to anchor itself. It learns to survive despite the difficult conditions, becoming stronger over time. On the other hand, a tree that grows in perfect conditions with no challenges may look strong on the surface, but will struggle to withstand a storm. People are the same way. If we always rely on others to shield us from discomfort or difficulty, We will struggle when we have to face problems alone. But if we embrace solitude and use it as a training ground for self-reliance, we develop the deep roots needed to withstand life's storms. Many of history's greatest leaders, innovators, and thinkers became who they were because they learned to rely on themselves. They did not wait for permission, approval, or constant support. They took action, learned from their experiences, and kept moving forward. Elon Musk, for example, built multiple companies despite facing immense criticism and doubt. He relied on his vision and problem-solving skills rather than waiting for others to tell him what to do. Similarly, Oprah Winfrey overcame a challenging childhood by developing resilience and self-belief. She didn't let her past define her. Instead, she used her struggles as fuel to build a successful career. These individuals did not achieve greatness because they always had a support system. They achieved greatness because they learned to trust themselves. Solitude also teaches us emotional resilience. When we are alone, we learn to process our emotions without external validation or distraction. Instead of relying on others to lift our spirits or reassure us, we develop the ability to manage our thoughts and emotions independently. This doesn't mean we should avoid relationships or ignore the support of others. It simply means that we should not depend on them for our happiness and confidence. The more time we spend alone, the more we realize that we are capable of handling life's challenges. We stop fearing loneliness and start appreciating solitude as a time for growth and self-improvement. We learn to trust ourselves, make our own decisions, and develop the strength needed to thrive in any situation. True resilience and self-reliance are not built in the presence of others. They are built in the moments when we are alone, facing ourselves and choosing to grow. Silence is often misunderstood. In a world that values constant communication, rapid responses, and endless noise, silence is seen as something to be avoided. Many people feel uncomfortable in quiet moments, quickly filling them with distractions, music, social media, conversations, anything to escape the stillness. But what if silence was not something to fear? What if instead it was a source of power, creativity, and strength? The truth is, silence is not a weakness. It is one of the greatest tools for personal growth, deep thinking, and emotional stability. When we embrace silence, we create space for clarity. Our lives are filled with noise. Not just physical noise, but mental noise as well. We are constantly bombarded with opinions, expectations, and information, leaving little room for our own thoughts to surface. Silence allows us to step away from the chaos and reconnect with our inner voice. It is in moments of quiet reflection that we can truly hear ourselves think, process our emotions, and gain insight into what truly matters. Some of the greatest minds in history have recognized the power of silence. Albert Einstein once said, "The monotony and solitude of a quiet life stimulate the creative mind." He understood that silence is not empty, it is full of potential. It is in silence that new ideas emerge, solutions to problems become clear, and creativity flourishes. Steve Jobs, too, was known for using silence as a tool for innovation. He would take long walks alone, free from distractions, to think deeply about the future of technology. His ability to embrace silence allowed him to create some of the most revolutionary products of our time. Silence is not just valuable for creativity, it also builds emotional resilience. When we learn to sit in silence, we become more aware of our thoughts and emotions. We stop reacting impulsively and start responding with intention. Many people avoid silence because it forces them to face their fears, doubts, and insecurities. But confronting these emotions is exactly what makes us stronger. Instead of escaping discomfort, we learn to navigate it. We develop self-awareness, emotional control, and the ability to process challenges without relying on constant external validation. There is also great power in knowing when to remain silent. In conversations, silence can be a tool of wisdom. The best leaders and communicators understand that silence can be more powerful than words. Instead of rushing to respond, they listen deeply. Instead of reacting emotionally, they pause, reflect, and choose their words carefully. This kind of measured response commands respect and demonstrates confidence. Silence also allows us to build inner peace. In a world that constantly demands our attention, taking moments of silence is a radical act of self-care. It is in silence that we recharge, find balance, and regain focus. Meditation, for example, is rooted in the power of silence. It has been scientifically proven to reduce stress, increase focus, and improve overall well-being. Even something as simple as taking a few minutes of quiet reflection each day can have a profound impact on mental and emotional health. One of the greatest lessons we can learn is that we do not need to fill every moment with noise. Strength comes not from how loudly we speak, but from how well we understand ourselves. The strongest people are not the ones who always have something to say, but the ones who know when to listen, when to reflect. The next time you find yourself in silence, don't rush to escape it. Embrace it. Let it be a moment of clarity, growth, and self-discovery, because in the silence you will find strength. Strength to think independently, to trust yourself, and to face the world with confidence